to serve thee all our days.
Welcome, and please be seated. We'll have a superstar introduce the guests.
President Dan, guests, and fellow Rotarians, my name is Peggy Talley. It gives me great pleasure as a new Rotarian to introduce our guests and visiting Rotarians today. We have two visiting Rotarians with us today. I'd like to introduce Lorna Curtis, who is from the Oak Bay Club and is Assistant District Governor. I'd also like to introduce Doug Pearson, who is from the Nanaimo North Club and is in Banning.
So I started Silk Road Tea when I was 22 years old. And like a lot of things that happen when you're 22, you really don't have anything, you don't really know what you're doing. And I would say, you know, in retrospect, I'm quite happy about that. And in fact, I should say to you that when I started my business, it came as a great shock to pretty much everyone who knew me that I was even getting into business in the first place. I was very fascinated by Asian culture when I was growing up. And I had a best friend who was Chinese and was exposed a lot to her culture through that. And was just completely fascinated by Asian culture and traditions and loved tea. And I always planned on becoming an ambassador. That was sort of what I wanted to do. And I thought that learning about tea was going to be a good way to learn about other cultures and help me as I, you know, eventually would get a job in the Foreign Service. What I did, and I went on to study tea quite intensively. And, you know, as I went through, you know, I was going to UVic and I was studying history at first and learning language, and continued to have this passion for tea. An opportunity came up to sublease a space in Chinatown, and I started to get enamored with this idea of opening up a tea shop. And, you know, as I will reiterate, I was doing a history degree. So I opened the store and completely fell in love with not just tea, but the business side of things. And as I say, it really came as a shock to everyone who knew me that I went ahead and did this, including my mother, who's a doctor, and really, you know, kind of felt that this was a big step down for me to open a store in Chinatown. You know, is that having a business is also a lot like tinkering all the time. You know, you have this opportunity to constantly make adjustments and tweak things. And if you're good at it, you know, if you make the right adjustment, you know, away you go. You know, it can be very, very successful. Or, you know, on the other hand, if you don't make the right adjustment, you know, things go in a different direction. But you're given this wonderful opportunity to constantly experiment. I've been in business now for 23 years. And the company has grown a lot. We started shipping to customers online quite a few years ago now, and that actually arose even before, you know, there was such a thing as online shopping. That, you know, we had mail order and shipping, and that arose because I had customers who came in the store and said, well, I really love this and I can't buy it anywhere else. You know, can you ship it to me? And I was like, why? Yes. You know, what originally, you know, drove me into opening tea, you know, or into opening a tea shop, separate from the fact that I became captivated with the idea, is that more practically speaking, what I discovered was that through my tea studies, is that there were an incredible amount of health benefits associated with drinking tea, and that tea was very, very good for you. But alas, the type of tea that we were drinking in North America was not nearly as good for us as it could. For most of tea's history in the West, the type of tea that we've had access to has been very low quality. And this is where the history side of me comes out, and you'll hear a little bit about tea history, but the Chinese were the ones that originally started tea production. And it was through, and they were the ones that developed and mastered all methods of tea manufacture and production, and then later it made its way to Japan and to other parts of the world, eventually making its way to Europe. And what's really interesting about that, of course, is that, as we all know, when we're exposed to something and we don't know it very well, we can't necessarily tell the difference between something that's good quality and not so good quality. So in the case of tea, when tea was first introduced to Europe, the Europeans had no way to know the difference between good quality tea and low quality tea. And what the Chinese sold the Europeans was very, very low quality tea that was very, very stale. And then, of course, consequently, the taste of tea, the type of tea that became popular in North America at first, was the same type of low quality tea that was popular in the UK. High quality tea is very much like wine. So if we think about, if all you ever had to drink was very low quality wine, maybe you wouldn't develop a taste for it. Of course, a certain amount of people will, no matter what. But that's kind of what happened with tea. And so when we talk about tea, we can compare it to wine, but we can really only do that if we start drinking higher quality tea. And although we've had an increase in terms of the range of what's available, and so there's more and more tea stores that are available, what continues to make us unique and what continues to make me get up in the morning is that there isn't enough of a differentiator. There aren't enough good quality tea sources for consumers to be able to have access to, and most of the tea that people drink here is quite stale. And buying tea is a very complex art. A good way that I would sort of describe it to people as is it's a little bit like buying Persian carpets. For those of you who have been on a trip to the Middle East, where unless you really know what you're doing, it's very hard to know whether you're getting good quality tea or not. After many trips overseas, and really I would say about a 10-year project, which I know sounds totally insane, but after a 10-year project, I launched tea bags. So it was a very, very long and intense process, and it sounds kind of crazy, but it was very important to me to make sure that we could produce a tea bag that didn't compromise the flavor or the antioxidants in the tea. We've had very, very favorable reviews on the tea bags, and a lot of people who have started drinking Silk Road tea as a result of the fact that we now have tea bags. Another project that I'm involved in right now, which I'm very excited about and quite proud of, is that we're the first company in Canada to grow tea. I want to get asked some interesting questions. Ooh, so there's some prizes. I've got 3 prizes to give away. So tea originated in China, made its way through Japan. The Chinese have been drinking tea for 4,000 years. The Japanese have been drinking tea for just over 1,000 years. It was actually the British that first started growing tea in India. They were trying to break the Chinese monopoly. So they were the ones that introduced tea growing into India. For Europe, it was sort of in the 1700s and really the mid 1800s that tea started to become popular there.
And in recognition of this, we'd like to present you with a certificate where we restore the eyesight of the gentleman on your behalf. Thank you.
Announcements, just to start off with, again, the first thing is congratulations to all the hard effort of the organizers of the car raffle and the success it's been. And I'm looking forward to participating in some of those discussions with the other presidents to help with our district governor, assistant district governor, to spread the load a little bit and create opportunities that we can push this much further than it has already, and this was an incredible result. Now, I had birthdays to do, and bought a bunch of chocolates, but unfortunately, neither Allie or Jim Swanson are here, so I'll probably put on another 20 pounds.
Thank you, President Dan. I am here today to present the District 5020 Literacy Award for 2014-15. And this award is given to clubs that get involved in 5 or more literacy projects, which the Rotary Club of Victoria has done. So congratulations for that. And I'd like to ask Janet Power to come forward to accept the award.
Steve Wallace, please.
It's extremely embarrassing, the club's behavior today. I'm just shrinking with the embarrassment. Everyone here who's drinking coffee today with a tea speaker will pay $1. If you are a tea drinker and you drank tea today, you are fine exempt. Everybody, a happy bucks. I have $226 for you, Janet, because I gave a presentation to a bunch of seniors. and they have all contributed to the Polio Plus.